The blood on Evelyn's hands had dried days ago, but the scars remained, stretched across her palms like spider webs telling stories she wished she could forget. She sat hunched over her potter's wheel in the dusty workshop behind the boarding house in Silver Creek, New Mexico territory, trying to lose herself in the familiar rhythm of shaping clay, but her hands trembled no matter how hard she willed them steady. It was late August of 1878, and the heat pressed down on everything like a heavy blanket. Sweat dripped from Evelyn's brow onto the clay, making it slick beneath her scarred fingers. She was 22 years old and had been running from her past for 3 months now, ever since that terrible night in Santa Fe when everything had gone wrong. The clay collapsed under her shaking hands for the 3rd time that afternoon. Evelyn sat back with a frustrated sigh, wiping her forehead with the back of her wrist. The workshop door stood open to catch any hint of breeze, and through it she could see the main street of Silver Creek, dusty and mostly empty in the afternoon heat. She had taken the surname Graham when she arrived here, abandoning her real name along with everything else from her old life. The widow who owned the boarding house had been kind enough to let Evelyn set up her pottery wheel in this abandoned storage shed, and in return, Evelyn helped with cooking and cleaning. It was honest work, quiet work, the kind that let a person disappear. Evelyn started again, centering a fresh ball of clay on the wheel. Her scarred hands moved with practiced skill despite their trembling. The scars ran from her palms up to her wrists, burn marks from when she had pulled her younger sister from their burning home. She had gotten her sister out, but their mother had not made it. That was not the part she was running from, though. That came after, when the men who had set the fire came looking to finish what they had started. The clay began to rise under her hands, taking shape into what might become a bowl or a vase. She was so focused on the work that she did not notice the shadow falling across her doorway until a voice spoke. "That is beautiful work." Evelyn jumped, her hands slipping and the clay wobbled dangerously. She looked up to find a tall man standing in the doorway, hat in hand, silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun. As her eyes adjusted, she could make out more details. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of whiskey. Dust covered his clothes, and he wore a gun belt slung low on his hips. "I am sorry," he said, stepping back slightly. "I did not mean to startle you." Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest. She wiped her clay-covered hands on her apron, trying to calm herself. "It is all right. I was just concentrating." The man stepped a bit closer, and she noticed he had a kind face despite the hardness around his eyes that came from living rough. "My name is Owen Lawson. I just rode into town and the widow at the boarding house mentioned someone back here did pottery work. I was hoping to buy a few plates and bowls if you have them for sale." Relief flooded through Evelyn. "Just a customer." "Evelyn Graham," she said, gesturing to the shelves along the wall where her finished pieces sat waiting to be sold. "I have several pieces ready. Please, look around." Owen moved to the shelves with a surprising gentleness for a man who clearly spent his life on horseback. He examined the plates and bowls with careful attention, running his fingers along the glazed surfaces. "These are fine pieces. Did you learn this trade from your family?" The question was innocent enough, but it made Evelyn's chest tighten. "My mother taught me," she said quietly, turning back to her wheel. The clay had gone lopsided, so she cut it off and began again with fresh material. "I will take 6 plates and 6 bowls," Owen said after a moment. "I am setting up a small ranch about 5 miles north of here. Just bought the land last month. Do not have much in the way of household goods yet." Evelyn nodded, focusing on centering her clay. "That will be $3. Fair price." She heard him counting out coins. The widow mentioned you do custom orders too, sometimes. Depends on what you need. I might come back for that once I get the house built proper. He paused, and Evelyn could feel his eyes on her. Those are serious scars you have got there, if you do not mind my saying. Evelyn's hands stilled on the clay. Her instinct was to pull away, to make some excuse and hide, but something in his tone was not prying or judgmental. It was simply observant, maybe even concerned. "House fire," she said shortly, and left it at that. Owen did not push. "I am sorry. That must have been terrible." She nodded but did not look up. After a moment she heard him gather his purchases. "Thank you, Miss Graham. I will be back soon, I expect. Town is a bit far from the ranch, but yours is the only pottery work for 30 miles. You are welcome." He left then, and Evelyn finally let herself breathe. She watched him walk back down the street toward the general store, his arms full of her pottery, and something about the way he moved made her think of safety. It was a dangerous thought, one she could not afford. Over the next few weeks, Owen Lawson became a regular sight in Silver Creek. Evelyn would see him riding in every few days, stopping at the general store or the blacksmith or the saloon. He always tipped his hat to her if he passed by her workshop, and sometimes he would stop to talk for a few minutes, asking how business was or commenting on the weather. Evelyn found herself watching for him, which troubled her. She had not come here to make connections. She had come to disappear. But Owen was different from other men she had known. He did not press her with questions or make her uncomfortable with unwanted attention. He was simply friendly in an easy, genuine way that made her defenses slowly begin to lower despite her best efforts. One afternoon in early September, Owen stopped by with a request. "I was wondering if you might make something custom for me," he said, leaning against the door frame of her workshop. "I want to send my mother a sugar bowl for her birthday. She has been after me for years to settle down proper, and I figure sending her something nice for the house might convince her I am actually trying." Evelyn smiled despite herself. "What does she like? Any particular color or design?" She always loved wildflowers. "We used to live in Texas, and she had a whole garden full of them, bluebonnets especially." "I can do bluebonnets," Evelyn said. The design was already forming in her mind. "It will take about 2 weeks, though. The clay needs time to dry before I can fire it, and then I have to do the glazing." "That is perfect. Her birthday is not until October." Owen pulled out some coins. "How much do you need up front?" They settled on a price, and Owen handed over half. As he did, his hand briefly touched hers, and Evelyn flinched back instinctively. The coins scattered on the floor. "I am sorry," they both said at once, kneeling to gather the coins. Owen's hand closed around hers gently, stilling her frantic movements. "It is all right," he said softly. "I am the one who should apologize. I did not mean to startle you." Evelyn looked up and found his face very close to hers, his eyes warm with concern. Her heart was racing, but not entirely from fear this time. "It is not your fault," she managed. "I am just jumpy sometimes." Owen's thumb brushed lightly over the scars on the back of her hand. "Someone hurt you." More than just a fire did this. It was not a question. Evelyn pulled her hand back, standing quickly. "That is not your concern, Mr. Lawson." "Owen," he corrected, standing as well. He made no move to touch her again, keeping a respectful distance. "And you are right, it is not my concern. But I want you to know, if you ever need help or protection from anyone, you can ask me. I mean that." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Why would you offer that? You do not even know me." "I know you work hard. I know you are kind to the widow despite her being cantankerous as an old mule. I know you make beautiful things with hands that have seen pain." Owen settled his hat back on his head. "That is enough for me to know you deserve better than living scared." He left before she could respond, and Evelyn stood in the middle of her workshop with tears threatening to spill over. She had not let herself cry since arriving in Silver Creek. Crying meant acknowledging everything she had lost, everything she was running from. But Owen's simple kindness had cracked something open inside her. She went back to her wheel and began working on the sugar bowl, pouring all her complicated feelings into the clay. The piece took shape under her hands, elegant and delicate, with space left for the bluebonnet design she would paint on later. That night, Evelyn lay in her small room at the boarding house and let herself think about Owen Lawson properly for the first time. He was attractive, certainly, but that was not what drew her. It was the steadiness in him, the quiet strength that did not need to prove itself. It was the way he looked at her like she was worth protecting, worth caring about. It was dangerous to think that way. The men who had killed her mother, who had given Evelyn these scars, were still looking for her. Her younger sister Sarah was hidden safely with relatives in Colorado, but Evelyn had to keep moving, keep disappearing. Getting close to anyone put them in danger. But as the days passed and she worked on Owen's sugar bowl, Evelyn found it harder and harder to maintain her emotional distance. Owen stopped by every few days, always with some small excuse. He needed another plate to replace one he had broken. He wanted to know if she could make a pitcher. He was just passing by and thought she might like some fresh water from the well. They began to talk, really talk. Owen told her about his ranch, about the house he was building with his own hands, about his dreams of raising good horses and maybe some cattle. Evelyn found herself telling him about her pottery, about how working with clay made her feel connected to something ancient and true, about the satisfaction of pulling something beautiful from formless earth. She did not tell him about Santa Fe, about her mother's murder or the men who were hunting her. She told herself it was to protect him, but part of her knew it was also because she was not ready to see the warmth in his eyes turn to pity or worse, fear. 2 weeks after he had ordered the sugar bowl, Evelyn finished it. The bluebonnets she had painted around the rim were some of her finest work, delicate and lifelike. She glazed it carefully and fired it, and when it came out of the kiln perfect and whole, she felt an absurd burst of pride. Owen came to collect it on a crisp October morning. When she showed him the finished piece, his face lit up with genuine delight. "This is incredible," he said, turning it carefully in his hands. "My mother is going to love this. Evelyn, you have real talent." She felt herself blushing. "I am glad you like it. This is the finest thing I have ever owned." He looked at her with such warmth that Evelyn had to look away. "Thank you, truly. You are welcome." Owen paid her the remainder of what he owed, adding an extra $1 that Evelyn tried to refuse. "For the exceptional work," he insisted. Then he hesitated, as if gathering courage. "Evelyn, I was wondering if you might do me the honor of having dinner with me. The hotel dining room does a decent meal on Saturday nights." Evelyn's first instinct was to refuse. Getting closer to Owen was foolish, dangerous even, but the hopeful look in his eyes made her want things she had thought she had given up on. "I would like that," she heard herself say. Owen's smile could have lit up the whole territory. "Saturday at 6, then. I will come by to escort you." After he left, Evelyn stood in her workshop, heart pounding, wondering what she had just agreed to. She was supposed to be hiding, disappearing, not courting a cowboy who looked at her like she hung the moon. But when Saturday came, she found herself putting on her best dress, the blue calico she had been saving. She brushed her dark hair until it shone and pinned it up carefully. The widow raised her eyebrows but said nothing, just handed Evelyn a shawl. Owen arrived exactly at 6, cleaned up and wearing a fresh shirt. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look very nice yourself." He offered his arm and she took it, trying not to think about how right it felt. They walked to the hotel together, and Evelyn was aware of the curious looks from other townspeople. Silver Creek was small enough that everyone noticed everything, and she had been keeping to herself since arriving. Now here she was on the arm of the handsome cowboy who had bought the old Morrison ranch. The dining room was modest but clean, with checkered tablecloths and oil lamps casting warm light. Owen held her chair for her, and they ordered the evening special, roast chicken with potatoes and green beans. "I have to confess something," Owen said once they had been served. "I did not really need all those extra plates and bowls I kept buying from you." Evelyn smiled. "I suspected as much when you bought 3 pitchers in 2 weeks. I just wanted an excuse to talk to you." He met her eyes across the table. "You are different from anyone I have met before. There is a strength in you, but also a sadness. I wanted to know more." Evelyn's smile faded. "Some things are better left unknown. Maybe, or maybe carrying them alone just makes them heavier." Owen reached across the table, palm up, offering but not demanding. "I meant what I said before, Evelyn. If you need help, if you are running from something or someone, I want to help." For a long moment, Evelyn just looked at his outstretched hand. The scars on her own hands seemed to throb. She had been alone with her fear for so long, and she was so tired of running. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Owen's fingers closed around hers, gentle and warm. "3 months ago, some men set fire to our home in Santa Fe," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mother, my sister Sarah, and I were asleep. I woke up to smoke and flames. I got Sarah out, but when I went back for my mother, the stairs had already caught. I tried to go up anyway. That is where I got these." She indicated her scarred hands. Owen's grip tightened slightly, supportive. "A neighbor pulled me out. My mother died in the fire, but that was not the worst of it." Evelyn's voice cracked. "The men who set the fire, they had been after my father. He had witnessed a murder 6 months before and was supposed to testify, but he died of pneumonia before the trial. These men, they thought he had told us something, that we had evidence or knew something that could identify them. They killed my mother trying to get information she did not have." "Dear God," Owen breathed. "I took Sarah and we ran. I got her to my aunt in Colorado, and then I kept moving. I figured if they were looking for me, better they chase me than find Sarah." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I came here to disappear. I should not have gotten close to anyone. I am putting you in danger just by being here with you." Owen stood and came around the table, kneeling beside her chair so he could look up into her face. Other diners were starting to stare, but he did not seem to care. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You are not putting me in danger. You are not responsible for evil men doing evil things. And you are not alone anymore. Owen, you do not understand what these men are capable of. Then tell me everything, and we will figure this out together." So Evelyn did. She told him about the 3 men who had come to their house that night, about their leader whose name was Frank Dalton, a hired gun known for his cruelty. She told him about fleeing in the night with Sarah, about the close calls in Albuquerque when she thought she had been spotted. She told him about the nightmares that woke her most nights, about the constant fear that had become her companion. Through it all, Owen listened without judgment, his hand holding her steady. When she finally finished, exhausted from the telling, he stood and helped her to her feet. "Let us go somewhere we can talk more privately," he said. They left the hotel and walked to the edge of town, where a small creek ran between cottonwood trees. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Owen guided Evelyn to a fallen log and they sat together, the sound of running water peaceful around them. "First thing tomorrow, I am going to talk to Sheriff Martinez," Owen said. "He is a good man, honest. We can trust him." "No," Evelyn shook her head frantically. The law could not protect my father, could not stop these men. Getting the sheriff involved will just make things worse. Evelyn, you cannot live like this forever. Always running, always scared. Owen took both her hands in his, turning them over to look at the scars that covered her palms. These hands should be creating beautiful things, not shaking with fear every time someone walks into your workshop. I create things just fine, she said defensively. You do, but I have watched you work. Your hands shake, you startle at every sound. That is no way to live. Owen brought her scarred hands to his lips and kissed them gently. Let me help you, let me protect you. Evelyn's breath caught. The tenderness in the gesture undid something in her. Why? She whispered. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Owen met her eyes in the fading light. Because I am falling in love with you, Evelyn Graham. I have been since the first day I walked into your workshop and saw you fighting to make something beautiful despite everything you had been through. You are the bravest, strongest person I have ever met, and I would count it an honor to stand beside you. Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks. I am falling in love with you too. That is why I am so scared. If something happened to you because of me, I could not bear it. Nothing is going to happen to me, or to you, not anymore. Owen cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. But we have to stop running and face this, together. Evelyn searched his eyes and found only certainty there, only strength and love. She had been alone for so long, trying to handle everything herself. The idea of letting someone else share the burden was terrifying but also incredibly appealing. All right, she said finally. We will talk to the sheriff. But Owen, if this goes badly, if those men come here, you have to promise me you will save yourself. Do not try to be a hero. Owen smiled slightly. I cannot promise that, but I can promise I will do everything in my power to keep us both safe. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he kissed her softly. Evelyn's eyes closed, and for just a moment she let herself forget about danger and fear. There was only Owen's warmth, the gentle press of his lips on hers, the feeling of being cherished. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I have not felt safe in such a long time, she whispered. You are safe now, I promise you that. They sat by the creek until full dark, talking about everything and nothing. Owen told her more about his ranch, about his plans for the future. Evelyn found herself imagining being part of that future, and the thought did not scare her as much as it should have. When Owen finally walked her back to the boarding house, he kissed her again at the door. Tomorrow we talk to the sheriff, he said. And then we start building a life without fear. Evelyn nodded, believing him despite everything. The next morning, Owen came by early and they walked together to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Martinez was a middle-aged man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He listened carefully as Evelyn repeated her story, asking occasional questions but mostly just letting her talk. When she finished, he sat back in his chair with a heavy sigh. I know of Frank Dalton, he said. He is bad news, no question, but he operates mostly out of Texas and Arizona territory. What makes you think he would track you all the way to New Mexico? Because he does not leave loose ends, Evelyn said. And because the man he killed, the one my father witnessed, was someone important. A territorial judge. If I could identify Dalton or his men, they would hang. Can you identify them? The sheriff asked. Evelyn hesitated. I never saw the judge's murder, but I saw the 3 men who came to our house. I could identify them. Sheriff Martinez nodded slowly. That makes you a real threat to them then. All right. Here is what we are going to do. I am going to send some telegrams, see if I can find out where Dalton has been spotted recently. In the meantime, you stay close to town. And Owen, you keep an eye on her. I intend to, Owen said firmly. They left the sheriff's office with Evelyn feeling both relieved and more anxious. Bringing in the law made everything more real somehow. Over the next few days, Owen stayed close. He moved his trips to town to daily instead of every few days, always stopping by Evelyn's workshop. Sometimes he brought her lunch. Sometimes he just sat and watched her work, the companionable silence comfortable between them. Evelyn found herself working better with Owen nearby. Her hands shook less. The clay responded more smoothly under her fingers. She created some of her finest pieces during those days, including a set of plates with delicate vine patterns that the widow immediately claimed for the boarding house. A week after their visit to the sheriff, Owen asked Evelyn to come see his ranch. "I want you to see what I am building," he said. "And I want you to imagine yourself there with me." Evelyn agreed, and they rode out together on a beautiful October morning. Owen had borrowed a gentle mare from the livery for her, and they took their time on the 5-mile ride, enjoying the crisp fall air and the golden light on the desert landscape. The ranch was more impressive than Evelyn had imagined. Owen had chosen a spot near a reliable spring, with good grazing land stretching out in all directions. The house was still being built, but the frame was up, and Evelyn could see it would be spacious and well made. "I have been working on it every spare moment," Owen said, helping her down from the horse. "Got the barn finished first and a decent bunkhouse. The house is slower going since I am doing most of it myself, but I want it done right." He showed her around, pointing out where each room would be, describing his plans. Evelyn could hear the pride and hope in his voice, and it made her heart ache. "There would be plenty of room for a pottery workshop," Owen said, almost casually. "That south-facing wall there would get good light all day, and the spring would provide water for your work." Evelyn looked at him. "Owen, what are you saying?" He took her hands, scarred palms up, and held them gently. "I am saying I want you to marry me, Evelyn. I want you to be my wife and build this life with me. I want you to fill this house with your pottery and with our children. I want to grow old with you and never let you be afraid again." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "We have only known each other a month. I know. And if you need more time, I will wait. But I also know what I feel, and I know you feel it too. Life is short and uncertain, Evelyn. When you find something real, something true, you hold on to it. What about Dalton? What if he finds me and brings danger to your door? Then we will face it together." Owen's voice was steady, sure. "I am not afraid of Frank Dalton or any other man. I am only afraid of losing you because you think you have to face this alone." Evelyn looked around at the ranch, at the home Owen was building with his own hands. She imagined herself here, waking up beside him every morning, creating her pottery in the sunshine, raising children in safety and love. It was everything she had thought she had lost the night her mother died. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen's whoop of joy echoed across the empty land. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, pouring all his love and promise into it. They spent the rest of the day at the ranch, planning and dreaming. Owen showed Evelyn the pieces of furniture he had already made, rough but sturdy. She told him about the pottery pieces she wanted to create for their home. They talked about everything from what kind of curtains to hang to how many children they hoped to have. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly headed back to town. Owen had insisted on bringing Evelyn back before dark, not wanting to damage her reputation. They rode slowly, hands linked between their horses. "I was thinking we could get married next month," Owen said. "That would give me time to at least get the house weather-tight, and you could move your pottery wheel out to the ranch. Unless you want a longer engagement." "Next month sounds perfect," Evelyn said. She felt like she was glowing from the inside out, happier than she had been in longer than she could remember. They were about 2 miles from town when Owen suddenly pulled up short. "Wait," he said quietly. Evelyn stopped as well, following his gaze. In the distance, 3 riders were approaching Silver Creek from the south. Something about the way they rode made Evelyn's blood run cold. "It might be nothing," Owen said, but his hand had moved to the gun at his hip. They watched as the riders drew closer to town, then disappeared into the main street. Evelyn's hands gripped the reins so tightly her knuckles turned white. "We should get to the sheriff," Owen said. They rode quickly into town and went straight to Sheriff Martinez's office. He was standing outside, watching the 3 strangers hitch their horses in front of the saloon. "Those men just rode in asking about a young woman matching Evelyn's description," the sheriff said quietly as they approached. "Said they were looking for a relative who had run off after a tragedy." Real polite and concerned sounding. "That is them," Evelyn whispered. "That is Dalton's men. Are you sure?" Owen asked. Evelyn nodded, her whole body trembling. Even from this distance she recognized the man in the black hat. He had been the one holding the torch that set her home on fire. "All right," Sheriff Martinez said. "Evelyn, you need to get out of sight. Owen, take her to the church and have Reverend Williams hide her in the back room. I am going to have a conversation with these gentlemen." "I should stay with her," Owen protested. "No, I need you back here. If this goes bad, I am going to need backup." The sheriff's tone left no room for argument. Owen nodded reluctantly. He helped Evelyn down from her horse and they hurried to the church, a small adobe building at the far end of town. Reverend Williams was an elderly man who had been kind to Evelyn since her arrival. When Owen quickly explained the situation, he immediately led Evelyn to a storage room behind the altar. "Stay here and stay quiet," the Reverend said gently. "God will protect you, child." Owen knelt beside Evelyn, taking her shaking hands in his. "I have to go help the sheriff, but I will be back for you, I promise." "Please be careful," Evelyn begged. "These men are killers, I know, but so am I when I need to be." Owen kissed her fiercely. "I love you, remember that." "I love you too." Then he was gone, and Evelyn was alone in the dark storage room, listening to her heart pound and praying harder than she ever had in her life. Outside, Owen returned to find Sheriff Martinez in front of the saloon, talking to the 3 strangers. Owen positioned himself across the street, trying to look casual but keeping his hand near his gun. "Like I was saying," the man in the black hat was saying, his voice carrying across the street, "we are real worried about this young woman. She has not been right since the tragedy with her mother, and we are afraid she might hurt herself or someone else." "That is real considerate of you to come all this way," Sheriff Martinez said, his tone neutral. "But I have not seen anyone matching that description in Silver Creek." "Are you sure about that, Sheriff? Because we heard tell there was a Lady Potter set up behind the boarding house, and that description sounds mighty similar to our missing girl." "There is a Potter, but her name is Miss Graham, and she has been here several months, well before your supposed tragedy." The man in the black hat smiled, and it did not reach his eyes. "Maybe we should just talk to this Miss Graham ourselves, make sure she is not our girl." "I do not think that will be necessary," the sheriff said firmly. "I know everyone in this town, and I am telling you, the woman you are looking for is not here." One of the other men, a stocky fellow with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward aggressively. "Now listen here, Sheriff. We did not ride all this way to be put off by some small-town lawman. We are going to find this woman, whether you help us or not." Owen saw the sheriff's hand move toward his gun, and he stepped off the boardwalk into the street. "The sheriff told you what you need to know," he called out. "Time for you gentlemen to ride on." All 3 men turned to look at him. The man in the black hat sized Owen up with cold eyes. This does not concern you, Cowboy. It concerns me when strangers come into my town making threats." Owen walked closer, his movements deliberate. "Like the sheriff said, you are not going to find what you are looking for here. Best move along." The tension in the street ratcheted up. A few townspeople who had been watching ducked inside buildings. Owen could see the general store owner shepherding his customers out of sight. "Your town," the scarred man laughed. "You are just some dirt farmer playing at being tough." "Maybe," Owen allowed, "but there are 3 of you and 2 of us, and I am betting the sheriff and I are better shots. Plus half this town has rifles pointed at you from windows right now. So you have got to ask yourself if finding one woman is worth dying over." It was a bluff. Owen had no idea if anyone in town was backing their play, but the 3 men glanced around nervously at the buildings surrounding them. The man in the black hat held up a hand to his companions. "Easy now. No need for this to get ugly." He looked back at the sheriff. "We will be moving along, but if you happen to see a young woman with dark hair and burned scars on her hands, you will let us know, would you not?" "If I see anyone matching that description who is in trouble, I will handle it according to the law," Sheriff Martinez said. The man smiled that cold smile again. "Of course. The law." He mounted his horse and his companions did the same. "We will be staying over in Truth or Consequences for a few days, just in case our girl turns up in the area." Truth or Consequences was only about 30 miles south, close enough to be a real threat. The 3 men rode out slowly, and Owen and the sheriff watched them until they were out of sight. Only then did Owen release the breath he had been holding. "That was Frank Dalton himself," Sheriff Martinez said quietly. "I recognized him from wanted posters. The man is supposed to be in Texas." Evelyn was right to be scared. They are not going to give up. "No, they are not." The sheriff turned to Owen. "You love that girl with everything in me. Then you better figure out how to end this, because as long as Dalton thinks she is a threat, none of you are safe." Owen nodded grimly. He went back to the church and found Evelyn huddled in the storage room, tears streaming down her face. "They are gone for now," he said, gathering her into his arms. "But they are staying in Truth or Consequences. They know you are in the area." "I have to leave," Evelyn said desperately. "I have to lead them away from here, away from you." "No, absolutely not. We are not going through this again." Owen held her tighter. "We are going to end this, Evelyn, permanently." "How? We cannot just kill them. That would make us murderers." "No, but we can make sure they hang for the murders they have already committed." Owen pulled back to look at her. "You said your father witnessed Dalton kill a territorial judge. Where did that happen?" "Outside Santa Fe." "Why?" "Because Dalton is wanted for that murder. If we can get word to the territorial marshal that he is in the area, they will send someone to arrest him, and you can testify to what happened to your mother, which will add to the charges." "But testifying means a trial. It means facing them in court." "Yes. But it also means ending this once and for all, and I will be right there beside you through all of it." Evelyn closed her eyes, gathering her courage. "All right, let us do it." They went back to the sheriff's office, where Martinez was already drafting a telegram to the territorial marshal's office in Santa Fe. "I had the same thought," he said. "I am telling them we have spotted Frank Dalton and requesting assistance. Should have someone here within a week." "A week?" Evelyn said. "What do we do until then?" "We keep you safe and out of sight," Owen said. "I am thinking you should stay at my ranch. It is far enough from town that Dalton is less likely to look there, and I can protect you better out there." "That would ruin my reputation," Evelyn protested weakly. "Not if we get married first," Owen said. "Reverend Williams could do it right now if you agree." Evelyn looked between Owen and the sheriff, both of them watching her with concern and determination. Her whole life had turned upside down again, but this time she was not alone. "Yes," she said, "let us get married right now." Reverend Williams was more than happy to perform the ceremony. The sheriff and the widow from the boarding house stood as witnesses. Evelyn wore her blue calico dress, still dusty from the ride, and Owen wore his work clothes. It was not the wedding either of them had probably imagined, but as they said their vows in the small adobe church, Evelyn felt a peace settle over her. "I, Owen, take you, Evelyn, to be my wife," Owen said, his voice strong and sure. "I promise to love you, protect you, and stand by you through everything life brings. From this day forward, you are not alone." Evelyn's voice shook as she repeated her own vows, but she meant every word. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world. They gathered Evelyn's belongings from the boarding house and loaded them into Owen's wagon. The widow hugged Evelyn fiercely. "You are a good girl," she said. "And Owen is a good man. You will be happy together." "Thank you for everything," Evelyn said, "for giving me a place to stay when I needed it most. You come back and visit, you hear, and bring some of that pottery. I want a full set of those dishes you make." The sun was setting as Owen and Evelyn rode out to the ranch. They were both quiet, processing everything that had happened. In one day, Evelyn had gone from hiding in fear to being married to a man she loved desperately. It felt surreal. When they reached the ranch, Owen carried her over the threshold of the half-finished house. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson," he said softly. Evelyn smiled despite her fear and exhaustion. "It sounds strange to be called that. You will get used to it." Owen had prepared one room of the house properly, with finished walls and ceiling and a real bed. He had even brought out some of her pottery pieces and arranged them on a makeshift shelf. It touched Evelyn deeply that he had thought of such details. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Owen held Evelyn close. "I know this is not how you imagined your wedding night," he said. "I stopped imagining a wedding at all after my mother died," Evelyn admitted. "I thought that part of life was over for me." "But Owen, despite everything, despite the fear and the danger, I am happy. Is that strange?" "No, it is not strange at all." Owen kissed her forehead. "We are going to get through this, Evelyn, and then we are going to have a beautiful life together." Evelyn believed him. For the first time in months, she let herself really believe in the future. The next week was strange and suspended. Owen continued working on the house during the day while Evelyn set up her pottery wheel in the barn. She found the work soothing, grounding her when fear threatened to overwhelm her. Owen had strung up blankets to create a private space for her wheel and kiln, and the light was indeed perfect. Every few days, Owen rode into town to check with the sheriff. Dalton and his men were still in Truth or Consequences, asking questions and clearly waiting for something. Sheriff Martinez had received confirmation that a territorial marshal would arrive within the week. On the 8th day after their wedding, Owen rode into town to find two strangers conferring with Sheriff Martinez. They wore badges and had the hard, competent look of men who knew their business. "Owen Lawson," the sheriff said. "These are Deputy Marshals Carson and Reed from Santa Fe. They are here about Frank Dalton." The taller of the two marshals, Carson, shook Owen's hand. "We understand your wife witnessed Dalton and his men commit murder and arson in Santa Fe 3 months ago." "That is correct. They killed her mother and tried to kill both her and her younger sister. We would like to speak with her, get her full statement, and then we are going to ride down to Truth or Consequences and arrest Dalton and his men." "I will bring her into town tomorrow," Owen said. "But I stay with her during the interview, and I want assurances that you can actually protect her once this becomes public." Marshal Reed spoke up, his voice gruff but not unkind. Dalton is wanted for 3 murders, including that of a territorial judge. Once we arrest him, he will hang. His men will likely hang with him. Your wife will be safe." Owen nodded slowly. "All right. Tomorrow morning then." He rode back to the ranch and found Evelyn working on a large vase. Her hands were steady on the clay, her face peaceful in concentration. It hurt him to have to break that peace. "The marshals are here," he said quietly. Evelyn's hands stilled. She took a breath and then resumed working, finishing the shape of the vase before cutting it off the wheel. "When do they want to speak with me?" "Tomorrow morning. They are going to take your statement and then go arrest Dalton." "And then it will be over." "Yes, then it will be over." That night, Evelyn was restless. Owen held her close, stroking her hair and murmuring reassurances. "I am scared," she finally admitted, "not of testifying or of facing Dalton in court. I am scared that this happiness we have found is too fragile, that something will come along and destroy it." "Nothing is going to destroy us," Owen said firmly. "We are stronger than fear, Evelyn. Look at everything we have already survived. I love you so much it terrifies me. If something happened to you because of me, I would never forgive myself. Then it is a good thing nothing is going to happen to either of us." Owen tilted her face up to kiss her. "We are going to grow old together, remember? We are going to fill this house with children and pottery and laughter. We are going to be boring and happy and so in love that our grandchildren will roll their eyes at us." Evelyn smiled through her tears. "That sounds wonderful." The next morning, they rode into town together. The 2 deputy marshals were waiting at the sheriff's office with notebooks and serious expressions. For 2 hours, they asked Evelyn detailed questions about the night of the fire, about what she had seen and heard, about the men who had come to her house. Evelyn answered it all, her voice steady even when she described the worst parts. Owen sat beside her, holding her hand, his presence giving her strength. When they finished, Marshal Carson sat back with a satisfied expression. "That is solid testimony, Mrs. Lawson. Combined with what we already have, it is more than enough to convict Dalton and his men." "When will you arrest them?" Owen asked. "Today. We will ride down to Truth or Consequences this afternoon with Sheriff Martinez as a courtesy, since this is his jurisdiction. They will be in custody by evening." "I want to come," Owen said. "Owen, no," Evelyn protested. "It is not a good idea," Marshal Reed agreed. "This is law business. You stay here with your wife." Owen wanted to argue, but he could see the fear in Evelyn's eyes. "All right. But you send word as soon as it is done." The marshals and the sheriff left within the hour, riding south toward Truth or Consequences. Owen and Evelyn went back to the ranch and waited. It was the longest afternoon of Evelyn's life. She tried to work on pottery but could not concentrate. She started dinner but forgot what she was doing halfway through. Finally, she just sat on the porch with Owen, watching the road and trying not to imagine everything that could go wrong. As the sun began to set, they saw a rider approaching. It was one of the sheriff's deputies, a young man named Tom. He was smiling as he rode up. "It is done," he called out while still dismounting. "The marshals arrested all 3 of them without a shot fired. They are on their way to Santa Fe tonight to stand trial." Evelyn felt her knees go weak with relief. Owen caught her and held her up. "Thank you, Tom," Owen said. "Please tell the sheriff we are grateful." After the deputy left, Evelyn turned to Owen and burst into tears. They were tears of relief, of release, of hope finally allowed to bloom. Owen held her through it all, his own eyes wet. "It is over," he kept saying. "It is really over." That night they celebrated quietly, just the 2 of them. Owen had been saving a bottle of wine and they drank it while sitting on the porch and watching the stars come out. The fear that had been Evelyn's constant companion for months finally began to loosen its grip. "What do we do now?" she asked, leaning against Owen's shoulder. Now we live, Owen said simply. We finish building this house. You make your pottery. We start the family we talked about. We just live, Evelyn, without fear or hiding. That sounds perfect. Over the next few months, they did exactly that. Owen finished the house, and it was beautiful. Evelyn created a proper pottery workshop in the space Owen had envisioned for her, and her work flourished. Without fear making her hands shake, she created pieces of stunning beauty and craftsmanship. The general store in Silver Creek could not keep her work in stock. In December, they received word that Frank Dalton and his 2 men had been tried and convicted. All 3 were sentenced to hang. Evelyn did not attend the trial, but she sent her testimony in writing. When the sentence was carried out in January of 1879, Evelyn felt a chapter of her life finally close. That same month, she discovered she was pregnant. Owen's joy was absolute and infectious. He immediately began planning an addition to the house for a nursery, and he hovered over Evelyn with anxious concern. "I am not fragile," she laughed when he tried to prevent her from lifting a bucket of water for her clay. "I am pregnant, not made of glass." "I know, but I want to take care of you. Let me take care of you." Evelyn's sister, Sarah, came to visit in the spring, brought by their aunt from Colorado. Sarah was 17 now, a bright and happy girl who seemed to have recovered well from the trauma of that terrible night. She was thrilled about becoming an aunt and spent 2 weeks at the ranch, helping Evelyn with her pottery and talking endlessly about everything. "I am so glad you found happiness," Sarah said one afternoon as they worked together in the pottery workshop. "After everything that happened, you deserve this." "We both do," Evelyn said. "You are doing well in Colorado, I am. Aunt Mary has been wonderful, and there is a boy, a rancher's son, who has been calling on me." Sarah blushed. "It is nothing serious yet, but I like him." "Good. You should be thinking about happiness and boys and the future, not about the past." Sarah looked at her sister's scarred hands moving confidently over the clay. "Do they still hurt? Your hands?" "Sometimes when the weather changes, but mostly they just remind me of what we survived. And they do not stop me from creating beautiful things." Evelyn's son was born in September of 1879, a healthy boy they named James after Owen's father. Owen cried when he held his son for the first time, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. Evelyn watched her husband cradle their child and felt her heart expand with a happiness she had never imagined possible. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you for giving me this." "We gave each other this," Evelyn corrected. "This life, this family, this happiness. We built it together." As James grew, the ranch prospered. Owen's horses gained a reputation for quality, and orders came in from all over the territory. Evelyn's pottery became sought after as far away as Santa Fe and Albuquerque. They hired help for the ranch, good men who became friends. In 1881, Evelyn gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Rose. Owen was beside himself with 3 children to dote on. The house rang with laughter and the controlled chaos of a young family. Sarah married her rancher's son and settled in Colorado, but she visited often. The widow from Silver Creek became a regular visitor as well, claiming she needed to check on her girl, but really just enjoying the warm, loving household Owen and Evelyn had created. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen and Evelyn stood on their porch watching their children play in the yard. James was chasing his younger sisters, all 3 of them shrieking with joy. "You ever think about that day in your workshop?" Owen asked. "When I first walked in and saw you working with your scarred hands." "All the time," Evelyn said. "I think about how scared I was, how alone I felt. And then I think about how you changed everything." "We changed everything," Owen corrected, echoing her words from years ago. I just helped you find the courage you already had." Evelyn looked down at her hands, at the scars that still marked them. They did not shake anymore. They were strong and sure, capable of creating beauty and caring for her family. These hands had pulled her sister from fire, shaped countless pieces of pottery, held her husband and children with love. "I used to hate these scars," she said softly. "They reminded me of everything I had lost. But now I see them differently. They remind me of everything I survived, everything that led me to you and to this life." Owen took her scarred hands in his and kissed them gently, just as he had done that first night by the creek. "These hands are beautiful to me. They always have been." Inside the house, Evelyn's pottery filled the shelves. Each piece told a story of healing and hope, shaped by scarred hands that had learned to create beauty from pain. Outside, the ranch stretched out under the New Mexico sun, a testament to hard work and determination. But here on the porch, with Owen's arms around her and their children's laughter in the air, Evelyn had found something she thought she had lost forever. She had found home. She had found safety. She had found love that was strong enough to protect and gentle enough to heal. "I love you," she said, turning to kiss her husband. "I love you too," Owen replied. "Today, tomorrow, and forever." The sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Evelyn Lawson smiled. The fear that had once ruled her life was gone, replaced by a love so deep and true that it had transformed everything. She was not running anymore. She was exactly where she belonged. Years continued to pass in happiness and prosperity. The ranch grew, the children grew, and Owen and Evelyn's love grew deeper with each passing season. In 1885, they welcomed another son whom they named Thomas. In 1887, a daughter named Clara joined the family. The pottery workshop became a place where Evelyn taught her daughters the craft her mother had taught her. Emma showed particular talent, her young hands quick and sure on the clay. Evelyn would watch her daughter work and think about continuity, about how beauty and love could be passed down through generations. Owen taught his sons about ranching and horses, about integrity and hard work. But more than that, he taught them by example how to love their mother, how to treat women with respect and gentleness. James and Thomas grew up watching their father hold their mother's scarred hands with reverence, and they learned that true strength included tenderness. Silver Creek grew too, from a small desert town to a thriving community. The railroad came through in 1888, bringing new opportunities and new people. But Owen and Evelyn stayed rooted on their ranch, preferring the quiet life they had built together to the bustle of town. In 1890, Sarah's eldest daughter came to stay with Evelyn and Owen for a summer, learning the pottery trade from her aunt. More nieces and nephews followed over the years, and the ranch became a gathering place for family celebrations and holidays. Sheriff Martinez retired in 1892, and at his retirement party, he pulled Evelyn aside. "I have been thinking about that day you and Owen came to my office, scared but determined to face your demons," he said. "I am glad I could help, but mostly I am glad you found each other. You two have shown this whole town what real love looks like." Evelyn hugged the old sheriff, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for believing us. Thank you for helping us when we needed it most." "That is what the law is supposed to do," he said gruffly. "Protect good people from bad ones." "I am just glad it worked out the way it should." By the time Owen and Evelyn celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary in 1898, their children were growing into adults. James, at 19, was running much of the ranch operation. Emma and Rose, at 17, were beautiful young women with suitors calling regularly. Thomas and Clara were still in school but already showing the strong character their parents had instilled. On that anniversary, Owen took Evelyn back to the spot by the creek where he had first told her he loved her. They sat on the same fallen log, now weathered by 2 decades but still solid. 20 years, Evelyn said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. I know what you mean. Owen's hair was starting to gray at the temples, and lines had formed around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But to Evelyn, he was as handsome as the day she met him. Do you have any regrets? Not a single one. Well, except maybe that I did not let you buy more of my pottery at the start. You tried to buy a dozen pitchers and I kept telling you that you could not possibly need that many. Owen laughed. I kept trying to find excuses to see you. It took me weeks to work up the courage to ask you to dinner. I am glad you did. I am glad you saw past my fear and scars to the person I could become. I saw the person you already were, Owen corrected. Brave and strong and beautiful. The scars just proved what I already knew. Evelyn looked at her hands, still scarred but so skilled now. Do you know what I am most proud of? She asked. What? That I broke the cycle of violence and fear. Those men tried to destroy me, but instead I built this beautiful life. I raised children who know love and safety. I created art that brings joy to people. I loved you and let you love me. That is my revenge against Frank Dalton and men like him. I refuse to let them win. Owen pulled her close. You are the strongest person I have ever known, and I fall more in love with you every day. They sat by the creek as the sun set, just as they had 20 years before. But this time there was no fear, no danger lurking. There was only love and peace and the satisfaction of a life well lived together. As they walked back to the ranch hand in hand, they could see the lights of home in the distance. Inside, their children would be waiting, probably arguing good-naturedly about something while preparing dinner. It was beautifully, perfectly ordinary. You know, Evelyn said, sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. That I get to wake up every morning next to you in this home we built surrounded by our family. Believe it, Owen said. You deserve every bit of happiness you have found. We both do. In 1902, James married a sweet girl from town and brought her to live on the ranch. Owen and Evelyn built them a small house on the property, keeping the family close. In 1903, they became grandparents for the first time when James and his wife welcomed a son. Holding her first grandchild, Evelyn marveled at how far she had come from that terrified young woman hiding in Silver Creek. Her hands, scarred and aged now but still skilled, cradled the baby with practiced gentleness. Your great-grandmother would have loved to meet you, she whispered to the sleeping infant. She taught me everything I know about pottery and about being strong. I wish you could have known her. Owen stood beside her, his arm around her waist. She lives on in you and now in him. That is how love works. It keeps growing and spreading, generation to generation. Emma and Rose both married within a year of each other. Emma to a teacher from Santa Fe and Rose to a rancher from a neighboring property. Thomas decided to become a lawyer, inspired by the stories of how the law had protected his mother when she needed it most. Clara showed talent as an artist and began selling paintings in galleries in Albuquerque. Through it all, Owen and Evelyn remained the center of their growing family. Their love was the foundation on which everything else was built. They still held hands when they walked. Owen still kissed Evelyn's scarred palms with reverence. Evelyn still looked at her husband with eyes full of love and gratitude. In 1908, for their 30th anniversary, their children organized a celebration. The whole family gathered at the ranch, along with friends from town and neighboring ranches. There was food and music and laughter, and at the center of it all were Owen and Evelyn, still so clearly in love after 3 decades. Sarah came from Colorado with her husband and children. The widow from Silver Creek, now quite elderly, made the trip as well. Even some of Owen's ranch hands from the early days, now with families of their own, came to celebrate. During the party, Emma asked her mother to tell the story of how she and Owen met. The younger grandchildren gathered around, eager to hear. Evelyn looked at Owen and he nodded encouragingly. So she told them an edited version, appropriate for young ears. She told them about being afraid and alone, about finding refuge in Silver Creek, about a kind cowboy who bought her pottery and eventually won her heart. "Your grandfather promised to protect me," she said, looking at Owen with all the love in her heart. "And he has kept that promise every day for 30 years. And your grandmother promised to build a life with me," Owen added. "She has made that life more beautiful than I ever imagined possible." The grandchildren were satisfied with the romantic story, but the older children and adults who knew the full truth looked at their parents with even deeper respect and love. As the party wound down and the sun set over the ranch, Owen and Evelyn stood together on their porch, watching their family. Children and grandchildren, friends and neighbors, all gathered because of the love two people had chosen to build together. "We did good," Owen said softly. "We did very good," Evelyn agreed. They remained on the ranch for the rest of their lives, growing old together with grace and joy. Owen's hands became as gnarled and scarred from ranch work as Evelyn's from pottery and fire, and they would laugh about having matching hands. Evelyn continued making pottery well into her 70s, though she worked more slowly, and Emma had mostly taken over the business side. She created pieces for each grandchild's wedding, personal treasures that combined beauty and family history. Owen worked the ranch until his body could not do it anymore, and then he supervised from the porch, offering advice and encouragement to James and Thomas, who ran operations. He never lost his eye for good horseflesh or his skill with difficult animals. In 1918, at ages 62 and 65 respectively, Evelyn and Owen celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch had been in the family for 40 years, a testament to hard work and love. 40 years, Evelyn said that night as they prepared for bed. Who would have thought that terrified young woman and the cowboy who wanted to protect her would make it 40 years? "I thought it," Owen said, helping her with the buttons on her dress that her arthritic fingers struggled with. "From the moment I saw you working that clay with your scarred hands, fighting to create something beautiful despite your pain, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. And I knew, when you held my hands that night by the creek and promised protection, that I had found someone who would love me exactly as I was, scars and fear and all." They lay in bed together, their bodies familiar and comfortable after decades of shared intimacy. Owen's arms around Evelyn felt like home, as they always had. "You know what my favorite part of every day is?" Owen asked. "What? This, right here. Holding you and knowing we built a good life together, knowing that despite everything we faced, love won." "Love did win," Evelyn agreed. "It won spectacularly." They lived several more years in peaceful contentment. Owen passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1923 at the age of 70. Evelyn held his hand as he took his last breath, tears streaming down her face, but also gratitude in her heart for the 50 years they had shared. "Thank you," she whispered to him. "Thank you for seeing me, for loving me, for keeping your promise. You protected me from fear and filled my life with love. I will carry you in my heart until we meet again." Evelyn lived 2 more years after Owen, surrounded by family and continuing to work clay when her hands allowed. She told stories about Owen to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, making sure they knew what kind of man he had been. On a warm September day in 1925, Evelyn Graham Lawson passed away in the house Owen had built for her, with her daughter Emma holding one scarred hand and her son James holding the other. She was 69 years old and had lived a life filled with love, creativity, family, and joy. They buried her next to Owen on a hill overlooking the ranch, and her gravestone read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and artist, she turned scars into strength and fear into love." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, as did Evelyn's pottery craft. Her pieces became family heirlooms, treasured not just for their beauty, but for the story they told. A story of a young woman fleeing violence and fear who found a cowboy willing to protect her. A story of two people who chose love over fear and built something lasting and beautiful together. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, family members gathering on the porch of the ranch house swore they could feel Owen and Evelyn's presence in the gentle breeze, in the way the sunset painted the sky, in the love that still filled every corner of the home they had built together. Their love story had become legend in the family, passed down through the generations as proof that even in the darkest times, love could triumph. The pottery workshop still stood, maintained lovingly by Emma and later by her daughter and granddaughter. The wheel Evelyn had used for so many years remained, its surface worn smooth by scarred hands that had shaped beauty from pain, love from fear, hope from despair. And every piece created there carried forward the legacy of a woman who had refused to let violence define her, who had chosen instead to let love heal and strengthen her. In the end, that was Evelyn and Owen's true gift to the world. Not just the ranch they built, or the family they raised, or the beautiful objects Evelyn created. It was the proof that love, true and faithful love, could overcome any obstacle. That a cowboy's gentle promise of protection, and a potter's courageous choice to trust, could create something more enduring than clay or wood or stone. They created a legacy of love that would echo through generations, inspiring others to choose courage over fear, trust over suspicion, and love above all else. Their story became the foundation story of the family, told and retold at gatherings and celebrations. Children grew up hearing how their great-great-grandmother had survived fire and violence, how their great-great-grandfather had promised protection and kept that promise for 50 years. They learned that love was not just a feeling but a choice, made daily through small acts of gentleness and large acts of courage. And somewhere in the New Mexico desert, the ranch still stood, filled with the descendants of Owen and Evelyn Lawson. The pottery workshop still produced beautiful pieces. The land still yielded its bounty to those willing to work it. And the love story that began with a cowboy holding a potter's scarred hands gently and promising protection continued to inspire, to comfort, and to remind everyone who heard it that love, in the end, always wins.